to pay taxes, we shall find you there and assess you, and you'll be able to pay. For instance, there is no field office in Rwanda, but URA is on ground. They are always...
Staff definitely leave for greener pastures. There are many opportunities after the training and skills. We produce very marketable resources who we either must find means to retain so that they stay with us, or allow them to go for better pastures. And I think the way to mitigate this is to improve the welfare of the staff. And I want to thank Parliament because last year some enhancement was given. So an office of URA has now moved from a basic salary of about 3 million to about 5. We hope that will help us retain some officers. We have also used that.
I think CG is not just about salaries. When we were at this other border post, Paro, yes, we asked why there were no ladies, and we were told because of lack of accommodation. So sometimes it's not just about how much you pay somebody.
Correct.
The other working environment also matters. We need to look into that too.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Honorable Chair, and that is correct. The staff welfare is encompassing their take-home, their other privileges like accommodation. And really, why I was appreciating Parliament is that gradually we've seen the support you give us through the budget, helping us to retain some people. Last year, we also introduced a specialist retain allowance for special skills who we can't afford to lose, like the people who trained in IT, very critical in supporting our systems. If we lose them, we can get paralyzed. So that we are doing those measures to improve the retention. Those are the ones that go for greener pastures. But of course, there are others also who have worked for a long time. This institution has been in existence for over 30 years. So with the enhanced terms, some of them prefer to go and do other things. And then the other category is the ones also who are weeded out because of not measuring up to the integrity standards. We've unfortunately lost about 80 staff for disciplinary reasons, those who involve themselves in corruption. So there are several reasons why staff leave, but I would like to assure the Honorable Chair and members that the staff turnover is still within the expected healthy numbers. I think best recommendation or practices of human resource management of transformation organizations like ours, anything below 5% turnover is within the healthy bounds or limits. Now, if you look at the numbers that have left vis-a-vis the staff numbers, we are talking of something in the range of 2 to 3%. So I hope, Chair, that answers the issue of staff. We need more support from Parliament to retain good staff with matching remuneration, matching facilities like the accommodation, and we thank Parliament for some of the regional offices we are building. Alongside that, we have plans to add accommodation. But overall, the turnover is within the expected numbers, and we are very mindful as management to retain key skills that we require so that we don't suffer inefficiencies because of staff turnover. Honorable Chair, the other question you asked was on the measures we are taking to achieve the target, and the Honorable Minister has already answered to that. Last quarter performance is expected to be better, but also the campaigns that he mentioned in his submission, like the enforcement of some of the technologies. Some of these technologies, we've been rolling them out for the last 3 years. Like IFRIS, we started effective rollout from 2021, immediately after COVID. The technology was acquired in 2019. But we've been rolling it out in piecemeals. We started with the big taxpayers, the manufacturers, the big supermarkets, people with accounting systems, because we are doing system integration. But of late, we are reaching out to other wholesalers, like the people in Chikubo. So when you hear some noise today about, some taxpayers threatening to demonstrate over IFRIS, this is a good technology, and we're explaining this. It is good, it levels the playing field, every taxpayer who is involved, and Honorable Dr. Agnes referred to this earlier, where you enter some places and they ask you, we give you e-receipt, or we don't, we charge you less. That is the unfairness that happens when there is no technology to monitor. The one who sells less undercuts those who are paying tax, and they will have a higher turnover. So these technologies are there to level the playing field, and we request for the support of Parliament so that when these voices come up of resisting the technology, our leaders, you tell them that no, this is breaking the law. Be compliant, let everyone pay their fair share of tax. And most importantly for the taxpayers, it will take away the risk of being over-assessed.
True.
Because with IFRIS, you don't have to file a return again. Everything you sell will be auto-populated, and at the point of paying tax, you will just submit, and we shall receive a pre-filed return. So you even cut the cost of hiring an accountant. And we have simplified this technology. You can use it on your mobile phone. So there is even no investment in the equipment to use. You don't have to have a system. Just a mobile phone and a small printer will help you issue an e-receipt. So we ask for your support on these technologies. They are good, they are simple, they will level the playing field. And I think earlier, Honorable asked if it is true that we can collect another 3 trillion if we effectively deploy or collect VAT. I really want to agree with that, the one who made that submission. I think it is a reliable source, because this IFRIS is monitoring VAT, which is an indirect tax, which is a purchaser tax. The one who consumes this bottle of water is the one who will have paid the VAT on this water. So if we can effectively roll out this technology, everybody consuming will effectively be paying the VAT. Now, without technology, you either pay it and it stays with the person who has sold you and collected it instead of going to government, or you don't pay at all, in which case the person not charging undersells those who are charging, and it causes that, yes, unfairness in the market.
Next.
So, Honorable, but besides that, we are closing a number of audits, which we think will bring in a good yield and the arrears recovery. Honorable Chair, there was also a question, and I think the Honorable Minister hinted on this, on the sensitization by Honorable Choma. We are doing this to the level best that we can to educate, and with more resources we shall even do better, because this is our focus. We want to close the gap between the taxpayers and the tax collectors. And really, the middlemen, the tax agents are good, but sometimes they become an obstacle. This morning I was dealing with the issue of people called container leaders who have presented themselves as middlemen between the importers, especially those semi-literate ones who don't feel the... Sorry. Okay, there are some people who don't go to import and they order and they trust some people. But what they do, these people have created a layer of tax collection. So URA assesses an example of 100 million on a container. Someone who has presented themselves as a container leader charges the actual small importers whom he has gone for 200 million. And the difference is his. And these are the networks we have shaken, who are now trying to mobilize taxpayers to demonstrate. Because we discovered this racket, we said, no, we want to deal with the importer. Even when you go as a container leader, please give us the individuals that have put in your container and how much they have imported. And we shall bill each one on a house bill, which is specific, and they'll pay for their items. But they don't want that, and that tantamounts to, you know, what they are calling overtaxation. They are causing the people to think that government is overtaxing them, but the middlemen are doing this. So we are trying to deal with these networks, Honorable Members of Parliament, and we request for your support as we educate our taxpayers. The more plan, yes.
Bujagali, and then you give us the rest in
Honorable,
in
yes, Honorable Chair, Bujagali issue, yes, it's true, we got the directive of Parliament to assess and collect tax, and indeed we issued an assessment. But immediately after issuing the assessment, the taxpayer ran to court. Now, after that, we got communication from the Auditor General that government had instructed him to review that case. So we could not go ahead with enforcement. Instead, we shared all that we had found out in our tax investigation to the Auditor General to complete. So I don't know where the Auditor General is with that case, but he's the one handling from that time. Honorable Chair, with your permission, indeed I can submit the rest by the honorable members, Honorable Tayewa, Honorable Marx. They were speaking about improvement of our presentation, and we shall take care of this in our subsequent responses. Thank you so much. Thank you,
please. And honorable colleagues, yes, Honorable Minister.
Madam Chair, as we conclude.
Sookera ddala ba staff abalina kukola guno omulimu ogw'okukungaanya omusolo tetuwera bulungi. Bw'obala ratio eya abawi b'omusolo n'abo abawukungaanya, enamba yaffe ekyali ntono nnyo. So ekisookera ddala tubadde tusaba Parliament etukkirize tugaziye enamba ya abakungaanya omusolo. Twamaze okukola gye bayita structural review. Twagenze nga tulaba bitundu ki ebitalina abantu abakozi bye tulina kwongeramu, functions ki oba wa wonna sente z'omusolo we ziyita olw'obuteemalirira ku namba oba ne skill. So eyo structural review twagimaze, ejja kwetaaga abakozi ab'ekitongole abapya. So yensonga emu gye tuleese mu Parliament. Naye ekirala ye technology gye tunaakozesa okwongera kukungaanya omusolo more efficiently. Ate bwe weeyongera mu area eya technology olina kulowooza ne risks ezijira ku technology. So gye bayita cyber security nayo gye tupresentinze. Twetaaga kubeera ne disaster recovery singa kubeerawo ekintu kyonna ku data yaffe. Tuyina awali safe wetusobola okuconnectinga revenue collection negenda mu maaso nga tetuyimiridde. So ekyo kyekitundu kyokubiri gye tupresentinze. Naye ne tools endala ng'amaato ag'okutuyamba ku patrollinga water ku patrollinga ennyanja eziri ku border. Amaato ge tubadde tuyina ge twajja mu support eya gavumenti ya Japan gaze nga gakula. So tubadde tusabayo batwongereyo, gavumenti etwongereyo ssente tugule ku maato gaffe aganaatuyamba ku patrollinga ennyanja, kubanga tulina porous borders. Ebyamaguzi we biyita nga tebisasudde musolo. So emu ku borders ze borders eziri ku nnyanja. Target empya gye batuwadde ey'omwaka ogujja eri trillion we butabalika asatu mu kamu ne billions 5 eziyitamu. So obutabalika asatu mu kamu n'ekitundu bwe tulina okukungaanya mu budget eno empya.
The concern of Honorable Herbert is a big one.
True.
The timing between when we send the policy statements to Parliament and when they reach the committee. So we will need to advise us maybe to use 2 routes, one route through the registry and another route direct to the committee, so
but our secretariat said they wrote and they requested that they should have come 2 days before you appear before the committee.
No, Madam Chair, as you know, I coordinate this process. And to the best of our ability, we have been able to provide these statements. But they don't reach because we send it to Parliament. They don't reach in time.
Okay.
So this is an area where we need to improve in the future.
We
Find a
shall
mechanism.
find a way on, as leadership, how to get it from wherever.
Okay.
Otherwise, thank you very much. And URA, we still expect more in the last quarter. Thank you. Honorable Minister Rogorebe, you're welcome. It is the NPC. We are going to have NPC and URA together present, and then we react after that. Yeah.
Waliwo minerals ze tubadde tetukolektingako musolo kubanga bwe twali tutandise okukolektinga abali badiringa minerals ezo ne batutwala mu court, naye kooti yasazeewo nti batandike okusasula. So Oweekitiibwa President yalagidde Minisita wa Energy okumaliriza ekiwandiiko ekinaatuyamba okugenda mu maaso okukungaanya omusolo ku minerals nga export ya zaabu ya gold. So ekyo kijja kutandika mu mangu. Minisita wa Energy ali kukola ku instrument enaatuyamba okutandika okusolooza omusolo ku mineral eyo. Naye endala zibadde zisasula kati, for example abadde exporting iron ore babadde basasula omusolo n'abadiringa minerals endala. Naye income oba omusolo ogujja ddala ogutali gwa export of minerals be bana bakolamu basasula emisolo emirala nga income tax. Refineries ziri wano bwe zikola sente zisasula income tax, nga pay as you earn, abakozi abakolamu basasula omusolo n'endala. So gap ebadde ku export levy eyo ye minisita gyakolako, minisita wa energy.
Waliwo ensonga y'omuceere ne textile. Wagambe waliwo nnyo okukukusa, tunyonyole ku nsonga tugitegeere bulungi.
Okay, okukukusa okubadde ku items zino ebbiri ziva ku amawanga agatwetoolodde okusanga nti gajjawo omusolo oba n'obutajjawo omusolo at all ku nsonga ezo. Katugambe ng'ensonga y'omuceeri. Omuceeri fena aba East African kubanga international trade taxes zonna tukolera wamu, tukolera ku tteeka erya East African Customs Management Act. So twali tutaddewo omusolo gwa waggulu 75% ku muceeri oguyingira mu East Africa. Naye Kenya yagenda nesaba okustaying execution of that high tax olw'okuba abantu baabwe bali balina enjala nga government erina okubakkiriza kuleeta omuceeri. So neyimiriza that import. Ne Tanzania kyekimu neyimiriza taxes ku muceeri. So ekyo ne kibaleetera okuleeta omuceeri omungi kuva eyo we bagulima omungi nga India ne Pakistan ne gutuuka mu nsi zaabwe. So bwe batuuka eyo abasuubuzi abatali honest ne baguribaginga bagezaako kuguleeta wano nga gwe balemedde Tanzania. Naye tubadde tulwana nakyo, bwe baleeta tugezaako tutestinga science ekirungi esobola kulaga nti guno gwavudde Pakistan oba gwavudde India. Naye si kyangu ekiri awo. So tubadde tusaba gana amawanga bagendere ku East Africa baleme kuleeta omuceeri kuva wala nga teguli musolo ate abantu baabwe ne baguleeta eno nga gwe balimidde mu East Africa kubanga ogwa East Africa tegubeerako omusolo. Textiles wano naffe twateekako omusolo gwa wagguluko olw'okwagala kusupportinga industry yaffe eya cotton. Omanyi wano we tulimira cotton omulungi ennyo asingayo mu nsi zonna owa long thread. So olwa government policy okwagala kwencouraginga processing ya cotton yaffe eveemu engoye tutandike kwambala engoye za Uganda, government yateekako omusolo ogwa charging per kilogram. So osanga nti olugoye tulupima mu kilo ne tusasuza. So ekyo kyaleetera omusolo ogwaffe ku textiles kugenda ku waggulu, ate ziri ensi ezitwetoolodde tezaguteekako, zo zasigala ku rate ya 35%. So ekyo kituleetedde okusanga nti asobola okuleeta engoye n'aziteeka e Kenya n'agezaako amagezi g'okufuluntula kuleeta wano olwa policy border asobola kukikola, n'aziyingiriza e Tanzania oba e Rwanda asobola kukikola. So n'olwekyo nakyo tubadde tusaba nti tuharmonizinga omusolo nga East Africa bwe gubeera nga gwe gumu akireeta e Rwanda ate tabeera na incentive ng'amaze okusasula eri okukireeta wano. So ezo ze zimu ku nsonga ze twogeddeko.
Waliwo ku nsonga y'abakozi okubongeza emisaala baleme kudduka.
No, yes, abakozi waliwo ensonga eyo. Tubadde tusaba Parliament etwongeremu ku ssente ze tunaawa abakozi tusobole okuba retaininga. So ekyo tukibuulidde ba members of Parliament nga tubasaba batwongereko ku ssente to improve nje welfare y'abakozi, omusaala gye basula, insurance ebabeezaawo n'ebyo byonna, so that najja mu URA awulire nti ayagala kubeeramu. Olusi kinaatuyambako n'okukendeeza temptation ya corruption. So nakyo bakiwulidde. Naye ate mbabuuliddeko nti ekitundu ekirala ekigenze lwa butabeera ne values ezifittinga mu kuwa values zaffe ziri 3 ze tupromotinga ku URA. Esookera ddala gwe omwoyo gw'eggwanga, patriotism. Eyokubiri ye integrity, kubeera mulambulifu, omuntu mulambulifu. Yoyo.
Meals for staff. Since when did these items become multi-year commitments? Under provision 23 of the Public Order Management Obligation, there is buying of meals. There
Okay,
is
that is noted. We are going to look
buckets.
through it.
The other one is on tax areas. They have an outstanding 5 trillion in tax areas, which they have not been able to collect. May the committee be furnished with information who are these people who are not paying to a tune of 5 trillion in terms of tax areas where they've not been able to collect. The other one is the commitment on minerals, especially gold and other minerals. They seem to be indicating zero revenue from minerals. Yet, day in, day out, people are being displaced. There is a lot of mining going on, and including gold export. Even the other day, the Minister of Finance and the President committed to a fact that fish more, this noni of fish, will fetch us a lot of money. And there is a lot of Nairo patch being exported. So why are you collecting zero from those minerals and from even the fish more that is being exported? Why are you failing to do the same? Chairperson, I beg to move, but Mr. Basil will receive those answers for me.
Thank you.
URA for the presentation, but also for the work, the struggle that they are involved in. And Chair, I have 5 issues which I wanted to raise. The first one goes mainly the Minister.
Honorable Minister, we need your attention here. The question coming is direct to you.
The Honorable Minister, when he presented the budget framework paper before Parliament, the indicative figures for domestic revenue, both tax and non-tax, were showing a target of 29.9 trillion. At that time, I remember we sat in the main plenary, and the ministry said they were working out that those were the indicative figures. Now there is an increase of 1.6 to 31.5. So the issue is that as a committee would want to know the assumptions that you have used to reach this target. Because way back when you are presenting a budget framework paper, it was there was almost zero increase. So 1.6 is coming from what? Secondly, Chair, I think this one should be information that may need to be submitted to this committee. Yesterday, the minister indicated projected GDP growth of about 6%. And I remember challenging the ministry that, the president has been pushing that we need to have a double-digit growth. Now, we would like to know the sectoral contribution to revenue. How does it compare with the sector GDP growth? Because if you disaggregate the 6% growth per sector, then we would be knowing that, manufacturing is growing at this percent, services this percent, retail at this percent. And then we have a comparative analysis of the contribution of each sector, and even down to the subsector towards revenue. I think that analysis we'll need as a committee. But then the question after that would be to the ministry and government to say, after looking at this growth in the sectors and their contribution to GDP, to revenue, what are you doing on the investment side to make sure that this cow that is giving you a lot of milk, what investments are you making to make sure that cow drinks enough water, eats enough grass to give you the revenue? We need that analysis properly so that we can be able to work together, because we are all in this together. Some of us sit on the budget committee. Chair will be asking you these questions, but we need to have this proper analysis so that we can push together. Now, on the budget cuts, I think the ministry should be very careful not to antagonize URA, because this one I should declare my interest having served. Why do you cut the wage of staff? For sure. Really knowing that they are spending sleepless nights.
And there are gaps.
So you should be very careful not to cut even what they have. Finally, Chair, on the two other issues, on page 17, slide 18, you are planning to have an oil and gas monitoring system. There is a time, I think we were in budget, when Petroleum Authority presented a similar request. I don't know whether you could harmonize to see whether the two systems can be integrated or you need to have a standalone. Areas by government. The minister should tell this committee what is the impact of failure by government to pay areas to people who have supplied government, and yet they are expected to pay tax. You remember when we even caused an amendment on the VAT to deal with the cash accounting. This was a huge cry. So on one side, you have a stock of areas, government is not paying, and people are struggling to pay tax. So we would also like to know how much of the tax is stuck in the areas by government, so that as you come for the budget to pay areas, we know that when we pay areas, people are going to pay taxes. Finally, Chair, I know we will have time to discuss the bills, but looking at the struggle we have to raise the revenue, I don't know whether we'll have an opportunity to also look at the international tax measures as a committee to see how can we, what kind of measures can be put up to help revenue mobilization. On the other issues of budget, my advice to the authority would be that as you look at the unfunded priorities, you will look at priorities or activities that will directly have an impact on revenue mobilization. That one is much easier to justify, because you know that we are putting in this money and we'll be able to directly have this benefit. Otherwise, we should support the taxman to help us out of this problem that we have.
Honorable Max Ochaya and then Tayebwa, URA.
In the minister's talking notes, there are things I appreciate and it's worth, but I agree that we are in it together. In improving efficiency, we will be facilitating trade And then the only thing that I would wish URA to think over is how in facilitating trade, on how they also handle the people they interact with. As you are aware, Honorable Chair, there have been cases reported in Parliament on rough handling of taxpayers, people complaining. On the answer has some record of those complaints. So the citizens should not feel burdened. We should own it as our thing. I also appreciate URA for taking care of information security preparedness. You know, we've been digitalizing for all these years, and I am happy seeing that we are taking care of information data security, because the moment we lose on that one, we've lost all the revenue. The moment the ledgers get distorted or someone steals our record, we are finished. We will fail to run government even for 1 month. So that is very key. The only concern I have, there are 3 concerns. One, on this one of information security, the 3-year estimate is 28 billion and cascaded over the years. So the next year, 2025, it will reduce to 8 billion. I only wish to know the clarification whether that takes care of the licensing or it takes care of the capital expenditure of the system. If it is licensing, if it is takes care of only the capital expenditure, then I expect that in 2025, when we'll have finished paying, then the licensing fees will reduce. That's for clarification. On the issue of staff costs that have been reduced, my proposal is that we ask the government and Parliament to reinstate the value for staff costs up to a tune equivalent to the existing contracts, so that URA is not seen, and this committee is not seen to be asking for what we cannot consume, so that we are also seen to be sensitive to the current struggles of our economy. We cannot say reinstate the full amount when it is over and above what we need to take care of the staff. That's my proposal on staff costs. I think it's only reasonable enough that the existing contracts must be serviced. In fact, nobody will question us, Budget Committee or in the floor will question us why we are asking for that, because if the staff exists and they are deployed, they should be paid and cared for. It's a given. But to ask over and above that, then we will need a proper justification. Maybe if we say we want more staff to improve efficiency, then we will have to put a case. That's the information we will need from URA. Finally, as I stop, on the minerals, which Honorable Chivumbi has talked about, I agree with him. In the statement presented here, URA collected from gold 2.1 billion. How about the areas? Did we collect anything on areas? Did we try anything on marble and all the other 50 mineral species in our country? Are they being mined? Aware that, for me, I come from Karamoja. I have also to clear my conflict of interest. Mining is happening there. The lorries transport minerals there every day. Even we have artisan miners. So when we passed the Mining and Minerals Act, we knew that we would now raise the revenue to contribute to this economy. I am concerned that at what is coming from this mining sector to the Ugandan economy, so that I can also be proud, and together with my people, we can be proud that we are contributing significantly to the GDP of our country. People are asking and considering our people in Karamoja as a cost center. But I want to be proud that we are contributing. I will only do that when you will show me what we are contributing. So far, 2.1 billion is nothing. I cannot be proud.
Okay.
Yes, that's that. I want to see that. Thank you, Honorable Chair.
Thank you very much. Honorable members, I beg that when you contribute, you remain in the room. because I'm noticing some trend that I'm not understanding. If I sense that you're about to leave, I will not pick you. I think I'd picked Honorable Max Ochai.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And may I take this opportunity to thank the Minister for the good remarks he made, and the Commissioner General URA for the presentation. To the Honorable Minister, you clearly indicated in your remarks that this policy statement was prepared within the context of the programmatic planning approach, implying therefore that the budget estimates are aligned to specific programs. Like development partners normally do, when they dispatch do in the field, they follow through, even if the money is actually ours. Now, in the case of URA, at what point in time do you allow URA to make an input into the budget preparation process, particularly allocation of resources, to ensure that the money they so collect is actually strategically and efficiently allocated for the good of this country? Now, to the Commissioner General of URA, you made a very good presentation, and before you signed out, you wrote the 6th chapter of the Book of Lamentation, and there you outlined 4 verses. All the challenges you outlined, to me, are void of mitigating measures. Could you kindly share with us the measures you are putting in place to address or minimize the impact of these challenges in your resource mobilization effort? Now, specifically to the presentation, slide 10. According to the Public Finance Management Act, Section 1315A, the policy statement is expected to clearly spell out and describe the outcome or the outcomes achieved in the previous financial year. In here, I do not see anything at all along all the programs. Could you indicate to us the outcomes as set last financial year and the progress towards realization of those outcomes? Slide 17. Slide 17 gives us the medium-term expenditure framework, implying the allocations which are forward-looking. Unfortunately, this is not a medium-term expenditure framework. Could you give us an appreciation of the allocations over the next 3 or 4 or 5 years as envisaged by the medium-term expenditure framework? When it comes to slide 20, where you spelled out the planned activities, again, the law requires us to trace through from the inputs up to the output, up to the outcomes. Here, we have outputs only, and they're not even quantified. Could we have the SMART outcomes inclusive? And I think those are all. I thank you.
I think I picked Honorable Tayebwa.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I want to thank the Minister and the Uganda Revenue Authority for the presentation. Madam Chair, as usual, we are given this information in a very short time, and for that matter, we are unable to interrogate and examine the work plan for the reasonableness, for the cost effectiveness, accuracy, and efficiency of the costed budget. However, the prayer of the Commissioner General is to pass and approve these work plans. And to me, this contravenes our rules of procedure 189, we are supposed to examine these documents. Therefore, we shall pass them as this because of the short given time, and even the nature of the work, the template. When you go, if example of workshop or workshop still gives a figure that is not broken down to understand what is composed of that. So I think we shall just approve as it is.
Honorable,
Yes.
Honorable, just a minute. We shall not just approve. We have the details in these bigger books.
And that's what I said, that the details in this big book, the template itself does not allow a breakdown of the figures if you took time to go through. But even the little time you are given, we cannot interrogate and examine to understand for purposes of reasonableness. Because we are supposed to interrogate and examine for reasonableness, cost effectiveness, efficiency, so that we know what we are approving. However, having said that, I'm not going to that. I'm just going to comment from what has been given to us, and this is from the slides. Madam Chair, if you go to slide 12. Slide 12 on total revenue correction for half a year was 13.9 trillion as per the budget or the target. Now, if that is half-year target, I want to understand, based on this, what is the annual target. But even going to page 8, slide 15, the total target was 29.6. Now, possibly the clarification I wanted, if the half year was 13.9, was it being targeted to increase progressively the revenue correction, or it was the average for the 6 months? That's some bit of clarification. However, going by that, Madam Chair, if the total revenue target was 29.6 for 2023-2024, and we are now targeting to get 31.57, the trend changes, and it's possible clarification on that trend. Because 2022-2023, the corrections was 25.151 trillion, the target. And the target for 23-24 was 29.672. That's an increment of 15%. Now, when you apply the same increment of 15%, the target correction should be 34.12 trillion, not 31.54, which is being indicated. I wanted to understand, why are you reducing from the percentage increment? And possibly we could get to understand why. Lastly, Madam Chair, Uganda Revenue Authority is indicating a budget cut on salaries of 57 billion. My understanding that the taxes is not a voluntary pay. You will never get anybody who is willing to pay taxes, never. Therefore, you must have people who should follow up this person and enforce the law that entails collecting taxes. And how will you do it if you are cutting the number of staff, reducing them, and cutting the
10 billion for the same activity, actually to deal with tax tribunals. And you also have almost 11 billion to that effect, if you look at your section D and all that. I would like clarification, whose mandate to deal with tax dispute? Because you're also planning for an activity, and the ministry is also planning for a similar activity, and you all have allocations to that. Number two, I'm trying to seek clarification on non-tax revenue. When you look at the Auditor General's report, last year you had under budgeted, and this year you're talking about you budgeted correcting 24 billion. But when you look at your, I'm seeking clarification where it could have been captured. When you look at your budget estimates, I can't find the 24 billion that you intend to correct from non-tax revenue. So you can help me understand where it could be. The other issue is on the audit of telecom companies. You have a consultancy firm that is doing the audit at 15 billion. And you also have almost 62 billion on ICT services. Honestly, Honorable Minister, isn't there any way we can empower our own teams, especially at NITA-U, to provide these services, specifically auditing the telecom companies? This is just running a system and knowing what they are doing. You cannot tell me that we need to pay 15 billion to a consultancy company to do a job that can be done by IT experts at NITA-U. So my concern is on that, if you can help us understand why we still have to hire consultants. Actually, against even your advice, when you look at the budget call circular, you said entities should avoid hiring consultancy services for services that they can do internally. So I think that is also against your advice as a minister or as a ministry. The other clarification I was seeking was on Reponami. When you look at the Auditor General's report again, actually the audit of the ministry, they are saying Reponami had not given the source code or had not transferred the source code to URA, meaning at any time you're at their mercy. If they decide to move away, you'll be stuck with rental corrections or rental data. You had promised to have the contract reviewed. I don't know how far you've reached. I also want clarification on that. You had also mentioned still the Auditor General, how far you've gone with that. There was also, now this is a bit general from outside now. Most traders have issues with your web portal. The argument is that you make changes or you bring on new platforms or new ICT or digitalization of your services, but you don't give them time to understand these services better. So it ends up bringing challenges in their day-to-day operations or interfaces with URA. And you end up closing some of them, you end up penalizing them for not following. So what's your plan or future plans on how best you can introduce or you digitalize the service and give your customers or our customers or our taxpayers time to understand the system and you to fully actually implement the system? Because even in the Auditor General's report, you can realize that somewhere they are saying IFRIS is not fully, all the platforms are not fully utilized. And I think it's also causing a lot of disruptions on your interfaces with taxpayers. Thank you so much, Madam Chair.
These 169 billion for staff recruitment and this structure review. I wanted to know from the Director General whether,
Commissioner General.
The Commissioner General, whether these include also salary enhancement. Because, Chair, there are some staff in URA that have been there for almost 15 years, but earning the same salary.
To the rural areas, those town councils, and set up some units with a view of increasing their focus on increasing the tax base so that those who are paying taxes don't feel too much burden.
Madam Chairperson, I want to start with your summary in respect of your requirement that we do a review on our tax exemption regime. Yes, we did this one, and we are now at the point of presenting the report to Cabinet so that we get the Cabinet input and also the recommendation of Cabinet to push the next stage. However, let me also make this comment. I know we have had concerns as stakeholders that most of the exemptions, that some exemptions are not necessary, which is true. However, Madam Chair, we also believe that if we want to grow this economy, what Choma was saying, focusing on taxing people alone is not a solution.
True.
We are talking about SME growth. Most of these are graduates from school, are school dropouts, and are people we are encouraging from the economic side that do this so that you enter into initiatives that give you money. So we have to be careful. We have to give them support in terms of favorable tax environments. So as we look at this policy of no exemptions, if we look at our initiative to promote SME growth, our initiative to attract FDI, our initiative to promote manufacturing, and many others. Some of these may be contrasting each other. And because of that, I want to say that we are not so quick at terminating the exemptions. We've studied, we have made recommendations. Even when you look at the tax proposals for this year, at first we had brought a number of them, but in various discussions, we had to drop some. So we want the revenue, yes, but also we must create an enabling environment for our businesses to keep thriving. Point 2, Bujagali, John will respond, and also on the human capital development and why people are leaving URA, also John will respond to that. I want to respond on the issue of
Revenue targets.
our revenue performance. It was raised by you, Honorable Tayebga, Honorable Katesh, and another. The target for last year is 29 trillion, and this includes both tax and non-tax revenue. When you look at which page? This is page 6, slide 12. 13.9 is almost, this is halfway. When you add it, it will give you, the target was about 27 point something, close 28, and this is what it will give. So when you add non-tax, that's when you come to 29 trillion. Normally, we normally see higher performance in the last quarter of the year. Like now we are underperforming close to 1.4 trillion now, up to 31st of March. But we are now in the last quarter.
Yes.
And we normally see compliance. And according to what URA has assured us, we have an assurance that by June 30th, we shall be able to meet our target of 29 trillion. So that one should not be a worry to you colleagues. Where is the 31 shift from 29 to 31 coming from? We presented in Parliament the tax measures together with the administrative efficiency which we are seeking. Both of them we expect them to generate 1.9 trillion, and this is the difference between the 29 and the 31. It is coming from the revenues we shall realize from the implementation of the new tax measures if approved by Parliament, and also the administrative efficiency mechanisms. You have seen this 4 trillion, for instance, in arrears, which one of our colleagues was asking about. The efficiency initiatives will bring some of the taxes, some of the arrears will be corrected. And all this put up together will be able to make us raise the 31 trillion. Most of the other issues raised,
Clarity, Chair.
Enos,
Some small clarity, Chair.
Yes, Honorable Tayeba,
Thank
make
you,
it
Chair.
short.
Chair, I want the minister to make some clarity. He's saying that the 29.6 trillion is both tax. No, now the 31 which is being targeted for this coming financial year, is it total revenue including tax and non-tax?
yes, it is both tax and non-tax revenue.
It is.
Honorable Enos,
It's going to
Minister of Finance, and also the activities which appear in our agencies. Madam Chairperson and colleagues, first of all, let me welcome my colleague, Honorable Amos, who has joined us. Madam Chair and colleagues, these agencies are related to us. We manage the policy, the agencies manage the implementations, which can be regulation. For instance, URA is an administration. Our tax appeals tribunal is responsible for resolving tax disputes. We have it as a subvention under the Ministry of Finance. But that does not mean that URA will not resolve some disputes which don't have to come to the tribunal. So you will find URA having a related activity.
In URA and the policy organ of this government, Ministry of Finance, on setting of targets. So if really this comes up very well, it's good for them to have an understanding so that when you Ministry of Finance sets targets, URA gives an input on their ability, given that they understand what it means to get some of these figures to be achieved. The other one is on IFRIS. When we were interacting yesterday with a certain team here, someone made a remark that through their interaction with the URA, that URA feels that if they effectively implement IFRIS, that you can be able to collect an additional 3 trillion. Well, I just want you to comment on that. I don't know whether that was something factual, because someone commented in this very room yesterday, but it doesn't work with you people. The other one is on the digital tracking solutions. You know, this is some new innovation. It's not so many financial years since you brought it into place. Wanted you to bring out the empiricals on the immediate impacts of this DTS solution. What is it yielding? Is it positive? And then during our last interactions, there was a very serious issue about the ledgers, especially on domestic taxes, or even all the taxes. Most of the taxpayers had raised an alarm that, you know, you have not corrected your ledgers. Some people had tax areas, they paid them, but over time, those very areas kept remaining in the ledgers. I don't know whether you have corrected that particular issue. Then also on the critical efficiency improvement initiatives, we want to see what would be the immediate outcome of this critical efficiency improvement that you want to put in place. What can it yield for us so that we see whether the initiatives will be positive for our revenue collection. And then lastly is on the special interest areas. You know, when I look at gender, when you say you want to address the gap in gender sensitivity in tax education and the rest, with my understanding on gender matters, I think you should go ahead and see how the initiatives you carry in tax administration, collection, and the rest affect gender parity in the country. And then on HIV/AIDS, you should also emphasize on issues. What initiatives are there to prevent? For example, when you deploy young people in very far off stations, or even married people in far off stations, you know, it can definitely affect their lifestyle, and that can be quite risky for their life. So that's how some of the things should be brought up. You know, if you deploy a young person at the border area there, where, of course, we have seen most of your stations there, definitely their lifestyle will not be led very well, and it can definitely put them to risk in terms of these areas of HIV and AIDS. Then lastly, on climate change initiatives, what are some of the activities that you carry out? How do they?
My glasses are for reading, not for seeing. You have worn black things only, I'm not seeing it well.
Task, and therefore they hinder the effective domestic revenue mobilization. There is need to quickly and effectively implement the new approved organizational structure, which will increase our staff numbers by about 1,400 staff. Number two, lack of data standards, which affect integration and exchange of information. As you may know, Honorable Chair and members, we've been working to expand the tax register through integration with other MDAs, but lack of standards across board or lack of automation in some MDAs have slowed down this process. The next is the challenge of smuggling, especially where the tax regimes and rates vary. So for example, we have a challenge in the smuggling of textiles as well as rice, because within the region, we've been having varying tax rates. And given our porous borders and the inability to effectively survey these porous borders and the limited manpower and technology, it makes it a difficult job to completely lock out goods that can land in our neighboring countries at low tax rates. Honorable Chair and members, I'd like to stop here and submit our ministerial policy statement for vote 141 for the financial year 2024-25. Incorporated in audits and investigations, and again, this one, all the three activities thereunder have stayed the same in the current financial year as the next one, again because of the limited resource envelope. Then research and evaluation capacity, also the activities under this are mainly research and innovation hubs, conducting corporate assessments and evaluation surveys, and some fixed costs under this. And these ones, again, they have stayed as they were in the current financial year. The final output, Chair and Member, is on tax compliance through improved efficiency in revenue administration, but now on the capital development side. And as already indicated, we have now received clearance for the Gulu and Mbale offices, and construction will commence. So there is a slight increase on that budget from 8.8 billion to 9.12. Motor vehicles, there is a decrease in the budget from 8 billion to 4.18. We plan to acquire some speedboats to help us on the marine enforcement, and we have planned for 3.2 billion. IT tools and data center have stayed the same at 10.5. Disaster recovery has stayed the same at 10.4. E-tax interventions have stayed at 7. Other office equipment, a slight reduction, and then furniture and fittings, a slight improvement of about 140 million, 41 million. Chair and members, the final key planned activity is the cross-cutting issues, including gender and equity, where 200 million has been allocated, HIV and AIDS, 560 million, was 19 trillion 937 billion. A performance out of the target of 29.672 trillion at the end of the financial year, and the performance is 67.19%. Chair and members, a quick look at the budget estimates, which is point number 4 in my presentation. The MTEF allocation for the financial year 2024-25 is 564 billion 260 million. This is a budget cut of 55.73 billion on wage. And Honorable Chair and members, our prayer is that this cut is reinstated, because if it is maintained, even this gap will not, the gap that will be created will not cover the current staff on the payroll. The cut was bigger than the gap, in other words. So we pray for reinstatement of this cut. As explained, Honorable Chair and members, there were delays in the recruitment process to cover the gap, but they have been sorted out, and by the close of this financial year, the existing structure will be filled. And as you'll see along, we are asking for additional support to cover the other areas and to bring efficiency on board. So the additional funding that URA received was support from United Nations University World Institute for Development of $38,000 or 148 million. And this was to support research and innovation. Chair and members, there are critical efficiency improvement initiatives that we would like to implement starting with the next financial year. And the number one critical efficiency improvement that we are proposing is to fill the approved structure. We recently did a structural review, mainly with the focus of improving the footprint of tax collectors in the areas that we are not, both geographical but also sectors where we are not collecting efficiently, but also to improve our function of risk management and strategy. We are also setting up a small unit to monitor the tax expenditures and improve the supervision in that area. So out of the proposed numbers for structural review, our prayer is that in the next financial year, we feel at least the entire structural review requires 169 billion, but our prayer is to do 60% in the first year and then 40% in the following year, so that in 2 years we are able to implement the recommended and approved new structure that will improve efficiency and tax collection. The next area that we need to improve, to implement in the new financial year is the development of the oil and gas monitoring system. As you know, this is a new area, and the current activities of this sector are being captured manually, and as you know, the amounts involved are significant. So we request to have a system that will help us monitor all the transactions, the investments in this sector, starting the next financial year with the development phase, and then we complete this in 2025-26. The next area is to improve our disaster recovery preparedness. We have a state-of-the-art data center, but we need to do a recovery site because of information security preparedness. So we propose that we implement this in the next financial year. The next area is automatic exchange of information, and we thank you, Chair and honorable members, for passing the necessary law to help us participate in automatic exchange of information with over 120 countries of the world. For us to do this, we will need a system that will be able to help us integrate with the other countries to exchange information. And this, we also pray that we do this in the next financial year. We have for long been having a dream to have an established tax academy to help us skill our staff, and we want to start the planning, but we can implement this from the year after, so 2025-26, and complete it in the following year. Acquisition of new tools, IT tools, computers and laptops to replace the ones that have gotten old on our networks is also something we plan and to implement over 2 to 3 years. And then we have also been requesting for increasing the capacity of parking area for the trucks and goods that are in our custody, and for that we propose to acquire a yard that will help us handle this. So, Honorable Chair and members, this is an area that would like to present to the committee today and ask for your support in allocating us a budget to implement these key initiatives, because they have a direct impact on the output of the revenue that we are mobilizing. Now, finally, Chair and members, allow me to, in summary, talk about the planned PIAP outputs, the activities, the allocated resources for both the current and the next financial year. And because these are clearly outlined in the tables, I will refer to the first table on point number 6, which talks about taxpayer engagements, consultations with private sector associations for purposes of improving compliance. For that activity, for that output, there are 5 different activities, and each of these has been allocated a resource as indicated in the table. But important to note is that for the current financial year, 29 billion 407 million was allocated for these activities, and in the new financial year, based on the available resources, 30 billion 207 million has been earmarked. Most of these we have maintained what was available in the last financial year because of the limited resource envelope, but at the same time, there are areas where I would like to enhance with the approval of this committee, like on the area of tax education and awareness across the country. The budget runs out half the year, and then there is almost a halt on these activities, as critical as they are, because of a limited budget. Honorable Chair and Member, the next output is the tax compliance improvement through increased efficiency in revenue administration. And under this, the number of activities relating to tax compliance, registration, expanding the tax register, facilitation of trade and quick clearances for groups like the authorized economic operators, deployment of scanners, monitoring of transit cargo, automation of bonded warehouses, and improved surveillance. Again, for each of these, we have almost maintained the available budget in the current financial year. It is only the scanners where we have downsized the budget because the expensive phase was in acquisition. We've been paying for these scanners in installments, and this, I believe, will be the last installment. So the budget has moved from 35 billion to 21. The rest have stayed as per the current financial year. The next output, Chair and members, again on tax compliance through improved efficiency in revenue administration, covers areas like ADR, alternative dispute resolution, intelligence and investigations to combat tax evasion, the maintenance of our science and forensic lab, the implementation for training, our learning and development agenda, skilling of staff, implementation of our strategy reviews and staff performance management, as well as upgrade of our IT systems, and the other fixed costs like staff costs and transport and others. Again, for most of these activities, Honorable Chair and members, they have stayed the same. There is a slight decrease on the systems upgrade budget from 41 to 40 to fit in the available budget. But as you can see, the most affected is the staff costs, which is a fixed cost, which has reduced by about 40 billion because of the budget cut that I spoke to earlier. The next output, Honorable Chair and Member, is on revenue collection enhancement. Under this, we have activities like ensuring on-time filing and payment, enforcement interventions, service support interventions, arrears and debt recovery interventions, and some fixed costs, again, some to staff and other costs like transport. And these ones have pretty much stayed the same because of the available resource envelope. The next output, Chair and members, is on electronic tax systems for both the national and local governments. And this is where we have technologies of IFRIS, DTS. We also have maintenance of the e-tax system and the contact center. All these, Honorable Chair and members, have stayed as they have been in the previous budget, all totaling to about 10,692 million. The next output, Chair and members, is on data analysis. The URA Ministerial Policy Statement for the financial year 2024-25. Honorable Chair and members, and I hope everyone has received a copy of this presentation, and the outline of my presentation covers the overview for Vote 141, the budget performance for the financial year 22-23 and half year 23-24, the achievements for the financial year 22-23 and half the current financial year, the budget estimates for the financial year 24-25, the critical efficiency improvement initiatives over the medium term, the planned activities and cross-cutting issues, and the challenges to the vote. Honorable Chair and members, our mandate, vision, and mission have not changed, so in the interest of time, I will move to the next page, which is the vote overview for the financial year 24-25 revenue projection. The total revenue projection is 31,574 billion, and this represents a growth in the target by 1,902 billion, and in percentage terms, 6.41% from the current financial year target of 29.672 trillion. Honorable Chair and members, a quick look at the performance of the last financial year and half the current financial year. For the wage, the performance was 89.3%. As already hinted, Honorable Chair and members, there were a number of vacant positions that were not filled by the end of the financial year. There was also non-wage, which performed at 98.9%, and the government of Uganda development vote performed at 87.4%, and there was no external financing. So the overall performance was 94.3%. And the reason for the performance on the development vote of 87.4%, there were a number of infrastructure projects like the Masaka office, which progressed well on schedule, but some of the other regional offices like Mbale and Gulu, the implementation delayed because of a delay for approval by the development committee. Chair and members, The budget performance in the half of the current financial year has improved slightly. The wage performed at 92.332%. Again, because there were a number of staff turnovers and the process of refilling those gaps was not as fast as the gaps that were created. But also on the non-wage bill, there were a number of procurements and execution of contracts which had not been closed by mid the financial year, but we expect completion and closure of this by the end of the year. So non-wage performed at 92.14%, and then the capital development performed at 100%. So the overall performance for the half year is 94.82% as projected. Chair and members, achievements for the financial year 22-23. One, the net revenue collection was 25,209 billion against a target of 25,151 billion, registering a performance of 100.23% and a surplus of 57.48 billion. The domestic revenue collection was 16,425 billion against a target of 16,188 billion, registering a performance of 101.46% and a surplus of 236.89 billion. The international trade revenues, the collections were 9,326 billion against a target of 9,462 billion. Customs enforcement operations alone led to a recovery of 132.77 billion out of 14,187 seizures. Additional achievements in the financial year 22-23, there were 882,286 new taxpayers that were registered, representing a growth of 33.7% on the register, and we closed the financial year with a total of 3,500,294 taxpayers. The average filing ratio was at 80.9% for payee against a target of 84% and 88.14% for VAT against the target of 84%. The total tax arrears recoveries were 1,991 billion. Of these, government commitments settled 713.47 billion, while 1,277 billion were recovered from non-government arrears. The tax investigations efforts yielded closed 167 cases and identified recoverable revenue of 174.6 billion. For the half year of the financial year 22-23, total revenue collected so far, up to half year, up to end of December, is 13,136 billion against the target of 13,937 billion, registering a performance of 94.25%. Domestic taxes collections alone are 8,808 billion against a target of 8,953 billion, registering a performance of 98.38%. Customs tax revenue collections were 4,646 billion against a target of 5,302 billion, registering a performance of 87.62%. 564,138 new taxpayers were registered, bringing the total tax register to 4,064,432 taxpayers. Out of these, 3,859,859 are individual taxpayers, while 204,573 are non-individual. The average filing ratio for payee was 74.51%, and for VAT, 78.27%, against the target of 84. The filing gaps during this period are attributed to the major adjustments that came with pioneering a new online web portal. So there was some transformation in the filing process because of a new web portal, and it affected the filing ratios. Chair and members, to continue with half-year performance, customs enforcement operations during the half-year recovered 91,390 million as a result of 9,962 seizures. The total arrears recoveries were 746.5 billion, out of which domestic taxes were 712.93, while customs were 33.57. Tax investigations efforts have so far led to the closure of 159 cases and identified recoverable revenue of 378.5 billion. IFRIS, which is the electronic physical receipting and invoicing solution, register as at the end of December 2023 stood at 68,428 taxpayers, with 31,547 being VAT registered taxpayers and 36,881 being non-VAT registered taxpayers. The total digital tax solution or DTS register stands at 1,172 sites. Of these, 878 are manufacturers, while 294 are importers. Revenue from DTS assessments and amendments was 11.21 billion, and DTS enforcement operations during the period led to a recovery of 12.13 billion out of 307 seizures. So revenue performance, Honorable Chair and members, as at 31st of March 2024. Owuliriza nnyo ekyo ekipapula kye babadde batambuza ekya propaganda y'okwekalakaasa kiriko ensonga nga nnya. Esooka, tebagala IFRIS. IFRIS njogeddeko wano ye system technology, si musolo omupya, ye technology gye twaleese eyamba omusuubuzi okukipinga accurate record y'ebintu bye byakola, n'eyamba ffe okwasesinga the right tax, omusolo omutuufu. So naye amazima genyine ereeta transparency omunene. Tosobola kugamba nti natunze ebintu bya miliyoni 5 ate nga watunze ebya miliyoni 10. So abataagala amazima ago okuvaayo bulungi tebagala IFRIS. Badde bagamba tebagimanyi, naye IFRIS eno twagitandika URA yajjako yalinga mwaka gwa 2019, 2 tetwagikwatako olwa COVID. Naye kuva 21, 22, 23 tuze nga tuyigiriza nga tuteeka ku companies enene, ba manufacturers, big restaurants and hotels, supermarkets. Naye kati bwe tunagiteeka ku bali ne tutagiteeka ku balala bali mu wholesale, ate abamu batunda bingi okusinga ne bali be tugitaddeko. Kireeta imbalance. Abo batunda nga tebalina musolo gwa VAT, bandakatinga ne batundira wansiko ku bali abagutundirako. So n'olwekyo kirungi nti ffenna tugende ku system eri transparent, tusobole okuwa omusolo mutuufu ate tulevelinge playing field. So tubadde akaseera last year nali mu kikuubo ne mbagamba kati tuze kubayigiriza, nalekawo tiimu ebaddewo best awo nga buli lunaku bayigiriza, naye kwegamba waliwo abataagadde kuyiga, ate n'ekirala waliwo abo ababadde balwanyisa amazima okuvaayo, so bakitaddemu amaanyi, naye abasuubuzi abangi bamanyi nti guno si musolo mupya, ate eno tekinologi ennungi ebayambako naffe netuyambako, ejja kujjawo enyombagani. URA yatuoversesinze, yatusabye omusolo muyitirivu. Wano tetujja gubasaba kubanga system yennyini ejja kuyamba omusuubuzi okusubmittinga return entuufu n'asasula the right tax. So mbadde mbaaniriza nti tebakkiriza abaagala ku blindfolding, bakiyita ki? Kubazibya amaaso n'okubalimbalimba, kubanga bw'ogalawo ofiirwa esente z'otakoze. Okay, ne government nayo omusolo efiirwa, naye afiirwa nnyo yoyo agaddewo edduuka lye. Ate abangi abagalako n'okugalawo tebalina na maduuka, bazze kubuzaabuza abantu. So tujja genda twongera kukinyonyola nga tulina akaseera kawanvu buli muntu ategeere. Naye teri nsonga ereeta okwekalakaasa. Mwebale nnyo.
My glasses are for reading, not for seeing. You have worn black things only, I'm not seeing it well. Please.
Thank you, Chair. I want to thank the Minister and his team for the presentation, and I also want to take this opportunity. In URA and the policy organ of this government, Ministry of Finance, on setting of targets. So if really this comes up very well, it's good for them to have an understanding so that when your Ministry of Finance sets targets, URA gives an input on their ability, given that they understand what it means to get some of these figures to be achieved. The other one is on IFRIS. When we were interacting yesterday with a certain team here, someone made a remark that through their interaction with the URA, that URA feels that if they effectively implement IFRIS, that you can be able to collect an additional 3 trillion. Well, I just want you to comment on that. I don't know whether that was something factual, because someone commented in this very room yesterday, but it doesn't work with you people. The other one is on the digital tracking solutions. You know, this is some new innovation. It's not so many financial years since you brought it into place. Wanted you to bring out the empiricals on the immediate impacts of this DTS solution. What is it yielding? Is it positive? And then during our last interactions, there was a very serious issue about the ledgers, especially on domestic taxes, or even all the taxes. Most of the taxpayers had raised an alarm that, you know, you have not corrected your ledgers. Some people had tax areas, they paid them, but over time, those very areas kept remaining in the ledgers. I don't know whether you have corrected that particular issue. Then also on the critical efficiency improvement initiatives, we want to see what would be the immediate outcome of this critical efficiency improvement that you want to put in place. What can it yield for us so that we see whether the initiatives will be positive for our revenue collection. And then lastly is on the special interest areas. You know, when I look at gender, when you say you want to address the gap in gender sensitivity in tax education and the rest, with my understanding on gender matters, I think you should go ahead and see how the initiatives you carry in tax administration, collection, and the rest affect gender parity in the country. And then on HIV/AIDS, you should also emphasize on issues. What initiatives are there to prevent? For example, when you deploy young people in very far-off stations, or even married people in far-off stations, you know, it can definitely affect their lifestyle, and that can be quite risky for their life. So that's how some of the things should be brought up. You know, if you deploy a young person at the border area there, where, of course, we have seen most of your stations there, definitely their lifestyle will not be led very well, and it can definitely put them to risk in terms of these areas of HIV and AIDS. Then lastly, on climate change initiatives, what are some of the activities that you carry out? How do they